Greetings, my name is Louise Dente and I welcome you to yet another edition of Cultural Caravan. On this edition is a special as we welcome back the second Assistant President General of the UNIA, Mr. Raymond Dugue. Welcome to Cultural Caravan.
Thank you, Sister Louise. It's always a pleasure and I thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, so, there was really, people were just so excited about the last time where you really shared a lot of important information, not just about the history of the UNIA, but about the role and the work of the great Honorable Carlos Cooks. This today is another special because we're going to really explore the African experience in Haiti. Tell us about that.
Oh, first of all, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. And let me say this, and you made a very good point, Sister Louise. It is an African state. For example, the revolution starts in 1791. In 1790, and this is incredible, 2/3, get this, 67%, almost 70%, 2/3 of all of the Africans on that island had been born and raised and socialized in Africa. Let me add more. From the 16th to the 18th century, we're talking over 200 years, no less than 30,000 Africans had been captured and brought into that island per year. Just do the math, 30,000 times 200 years, meaning it was more profitable to work these Africans to death, replace the African, than to maintain it. And this is not over a year. This is over 200 years consecutively. And then after 1751, leading up to 1758, the population in that island, and before, and I have to inform your guests, your listeners, that it was called Saint-Domingue. It wasn't until the 1805 May 20 Constitution that Dessalines changed the name. It was a colony, it belonged to France. Anyway, but Sister Louise, we're talking up until around the 1750s, it was 100,000 Africans enslaved in Saint-Domingue. After that time period, and that was a direct result of what Francois Mackendal did, and I'll explain to you who he is. Francois Mackendal, what he did, they went out and more than quadrupled the population, the enslavement population, meaning it went from 100,000 to more than 500,000. What had happened was the Africans in Saint-Domingue rose up, and all of it can be traced back to one individual. And I think we really need to give him credit. His name is Francois Mackendal. And get this, Sister Louise, you heard of Wakanda? Well, Francois Mackendal was from Makanda in the Congo, in Africa. In fact, he was born 1728, 1740, he's kidnapped, brought into Saint-Domingue. 1740, he gets there, but just 12 years old, he had a knowledge of herbs, spices, medication, everything. And so he had become so profound, so well-known and charismatic that secretly all of the enslavement population, at the risk of personal security, would go and listen to him at night. The man was phenomenal. And let me add, as you pointed out, I am a member of the UNIA. He was truly a proponent of race first, because you had Maroons all over the Caribbean, especially in Jamaica. Jamaica is well known for the Maroon community. Well, He was a Maroon. The Maroons were the ones who left the plantations, went to the mountains, and started their own community. And they would go back and attack and reestablish and try to free our people. Anyway, he becomes a Maroon, and he makes that great, profound decision. It's not about me. No, it's about us. It is race first. It wasn't just creating a community for me. I've got to make sure I can liberate all of my people. This started in 1751. They had no arms, no weapons. You know what he does? He reaches out to the enslavement population and said, guess what? I'm going to create poisons for you. Give it to your slave master. Let's go and kill them. Let's liberate. And a lot of the Africans were scared, like, can we really do this? So they said, yes, we can. We can do it. No, we don't have arms. We don't have weapons. He said, don't worry about that. United we stand. Divided we fall. So it was going great. Mackendal, and the beauty of Mackendal, he was the very first person in recorded history in this hemisphere who prophesied, we will defeat these Europeans, these Caucasians, these evildoers, and we will establish our own. This is 1751. Nobody had ever thought of that. So Mackendal had it going.
Tell us about and as you talk about, a lot of people associate Toussaint Louverture as being with the Haitian Revolution, but as you said, there were a series of others. There was Mackendal. Then what led to the time that most of us know as the point where the Haitian people came, to really face-to-face, confrontation?
Oh, easily. Okay. Mackendal has it going on. And let me say this, and this is the thread in the history of Africans on that island, in the sense that we've never actually been physically defeated. We've always been played. I mean, this is amazing. Mackendal's lieutenants sell him out. He's captured and he is executed 1758. 1758, two people are born in that year. One is going to be the great Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who is the liberator, the race avenger, and the other one is Cécile Fatima, who is going to be a priestess in the study of Vodun. And let me say this, and before we get to Toussaint, I have to inform our listeners, before we got to these colonies, to these plantations, there was no Christianity. I mean, it didn't exist for us. We were practicing our indigenous faith, where we understand in nature, in tune, where we respect everyone, where we are sun people. Keep that in mind. Okay, so as soon as we Africans are brought to this, and let me say this, the first known date of enslavement in that island is 1517. And guess whose plantation that is? Christopher Columbus's son. The first recorded rebellion is 1522 on his son's plantation in the north of Haiti. Anyway, soon as we get there, they have to convince us, brainwash us to be Christian, specifically to be Catholics, because the French controlled Saint-Domingue and part of it was controlled by Spain. They're both Catholic. So here it is. The whole concept of Vodun, we realize, guess what? They're going to make us believe Christianity. Underneath, we were still going to practice what brought us here, what can liberate us. And so from that time on, there's been a big push of the white infrastructure, the Christian faith, the Catholicism, to grossly misrepresent, denounce, and negate Vodun. But everything about Vodun is African, Sister Louise. For example, there is a mythical land called Guinea. I mean, I grew up in Haiti always hearing anything, and I'm going to say this in Creole. Ma pretourne Guinea. Guinea, this man from Guinea, I'm going back home to Guinea. Do you know what Guinea meant? Africa. That was the mythical land, the cosmic Africa. This was completely African. And we call on our spirits to protect and defend us. Getting back to Toussaint. Toussaint comes on the scene around 1791. 1791, there is a brother named Boukman Dutties who was from Jamaica. He was supposedly a tough guy. He was a quote-unquote troublemaker. And the owner, the slave owner, thought, guess what? Let's send him outside of Jamaica, send him to Saint-Domingue. But that was the best thing. Boukman Dutties comes to Jamaica. He's working on a plantation. He's going to meet Cecile Fatima, who was born 1758. Cecile Fatima educates him, teaches him Boukman's prayer. On August 14, 1791, there's a big meeting in the north of Haiti, outside of Cap-Haïtien, Bois Caïman. It was the forest of the crocodiles. Okay. There they planned and they organized. They said, you know what? The time is now. We can defeat these people. This is wrong. 30,000 of us are killed every year. They rape, violate, commit genocide, all for their profits. Our God who is so good, He who created the sun which shines us on from above, who creates the sea that rouses the thunder, that God who is so good, He will command us to vengeance. Their God, the evilness of the white man, which calls forth upon crime, will punish, will be evil. But our God, who is so good, wills good works. He commands us to vengeance. Then He says, throw away the likeness of the white man's God, who for so long has brought us to tears, and listen to liberty, which speaks in our hearts. This is Boukman's prayer that is delivered August 14, 1791. That starts the official revolution. All of that prayer is from Cecile Fatima. Cecile Fatima does the invocation, does the blessing, does the sacrifice. The next day, they plan and plot. They wait 7 days. August 21, the Africans unleash terror as it should be. With their machetes, they go out and kill every white slave owner they could see. Anything white, killed, cut, destroyed. It's working. It's absolutely working, Sister Louise. A month later, we're talking September 22, 1791. You have to understand Caucasian philosophy. The arrogance, the disrespect, the denunciation. They send a message to Boukman and they tell Boukman, lay down your weapons. Boukman says, why am I laying down my weapons? I'm winning. I'm killing you. I've got the upper hand. What do you think happens in 2 months later? In November, one of Boukman's lieutenants sold him out. This is you're going to find this happens. It's as if, we tend to always go against wrong. But anyway, Boukman had a 5-point plan. So simple. Number 1, self-emancipation. Declare yourselves free. Because no one can make you free. You make yourself free. That was number 1. Number 2, kill all the whites and burn the crops. Number 3, burn the cities. If there's no cities, they've got to go. Number 4, set up camps in the mountains. And number 5, unleash terror, kill all the whites, and keep going east. Go all of that island, go into the Spanish forces. Sister Louise, brothers and sisters, it was working. Everything is going on. But then, sell out, he's killed. New guys come in. There's Bissot and Jeannot. 2 guys come in. Now, they were Boukman's lieutenants. They're talking a different language. No one is talking race first. No one is talking conquer or die. Now they're talking, the Sambo dance, the Uncle Tom dance. Well, let's negotiate. Maybe we can have the slaves work 3 days a week for you, master, 4 days for themselves. Let's give amnesty to the leaders of the revolution. And they're not talking all of the leaders. 40 or 50, give them some houses. That was never going to work. Whenever you sell out, you will get killed. And so this is when Toussaint, his name is Breda, Monsieur Breda starts rising up. He's following. In fact, he was the assistant to Bissot. Bissot and Jeannot eventually, they're retired. They go have a big home in what they call now Dominican Republic. So Breda changes his name. he says, you know what? I'm the opening. I will be your guide. L'ouverture. That's the opening. Toussaint, All Saints. That's when he changes his name. So Breda becomes Toussaint Louverture. Let me say this, and there's a reason why he's well known. After the revolution, who writes the history books? Not us, the losers. They write the history books, they control the dialogue. So they're going to denounce Dessalines, denounce what the Africans did, and they're going to promote Toussaint. Because even though Toussaint was brave and he did great things, Toussaint never believed in race first. He never believed that we could be free.
So tell us about, you mentioned something a moment ago. You said that Toussaint Louverture, he was not what people perceived him as in terms of as revolutionary. To some, you may have burst a bubble. Explain that. What was his position versus who you referred to as Jean-Jacques Dessalines? Tell us the difference.
Oh, sure, with pleasure. And let's keep in mind how Toussaint dies. Toussaint was invited to a meeting with the French. He is tricked and fooled. He's kidnapped. They send him back to France, and he dies of tuberculosis in Fort du Jour in the south of France. Now, let's contrast that with Dessalines. Anytime the French wanted to meet with him, he would travel with no less than 500 of his soldiers, all armed, all ready. Toussaint actually believed that they wanted to meet with him. How you could be a general of an army, your opposing side asks you to come to a meeting? I mean, I just can't imagine it. And I know why. Because Toussaint actually believed the bluff. And in the Declaration of Independence, Dessalines says, what has brought us to tears for so long was the phantom of liberty that France jingled in front of our eyes. You have to understand, 1789, the French have their so-called revolution, where they believe in fraternité, égalité, liberté. Yeah, okay, if you believe that. But they were still enslaving black people. So it couldn't have been true. And let me add, Sister Louise, I have to inform the audience. That French Revolution, 1789, cannot happen, will never happen unless Mackendal does his start of his revolution. Because what had happened is the whole world was connected. The French peasants saw what was happening in Saint-Domingue. They were thinking to themselves, these poor souls, wretched of the earth, they're standing up and they don't even have a voice. Here we are in France and we're being treated like peasants and Marie Antoinette wants to eat her cake? No. So people don't understand, don't give our people enough credit because we're not writing the history. You know, until the lion's historian, until the lion gets his historian, the hunter will be continued to be glorified.
So you're saying that there was actually the Africans in Saint-Domingue, later known as Haiti, who actually inspired the French peasants to overrun, to revolt. That is it. So that's something we definitely
absolutely. No, absolutely. It was because of that. Because Mackendal had become world famous. I mean, can you imagine to be enslaving to prophesize? We're going to beat these people. We will run the show. And we will take this revolution everywhere. So the peasants in France were thinking, who is this guy to be talking that? And here we can't even get food. So no, anyway, so there's a French Revolution from 1789. It's gone by 1799 when Napoleon takes over as the first consul. So those days are over. Anyway, what happened is Toussaint actually believed in the bluff. And it's really sad. It's almost what you see now, our people that are protesting, they actually believe, they're going to, that the powers that be are going to acquiesce. No. As Frederick Douglass said, there is no demand. Nothing will have. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. You've got to go create it, build it, then your demand is there. But anyway, getting back to it, Toussaint actually believed in that. And here's something else. We're going to discuss the Constitution that Dessalines established in May 20, 1805, and it's completely revolutionary. But Toussaint had his own constitution. In 1801, in July 12, he calls it the colony of Saint-Domingue. It wasn't a revolution. It was, I'm just taking over the colony for my French masters. I'll be the governor, but instead of white faces, it's going to be black faces with white domination. And not only that, but believe it or not, Toussaint is even actually going to put to death his cousin, General Moise. Moise stood for race first. He was saying, what are we negotiating with these whites? These are evil. 30,000 killed every year for 200 years. There's nothing to negotiate. Kill them off. And Toussaint wanted to impress upon the French, we could have victories. We are equal to you. Moise, Dessalines, we don't need to impress them. Just kill them. I mean, if you kill them, there's no more people to oppress you. It's simple as that. So the vision was clear to establish a black homeland, and Toussaint did not get it. And this led to his downfall. When they requested a meeting, he went unarmed. I mean, I just can't imagine that. Anytime they wanted to meet Dessalines, he's walking with no less than 500. And let me tell you, Dessalines' soldiers were significant for a different reason. Practically his best soldiers had all been born in Africa. It's amazing. I mean, 2/3 of the Africans had been born, raised, and socialized, but his soldiers, Dessalines' core group soldiers, were all born in Africa. In fact, you know what they call themselves? Congo. I mean, Congo for time immemorial has been Africa. So to answer your question, Toussaint is being given the credit because we're not writing the history. They are. And if anybody was going to give them the benefit of the doubt, it would be him. And last thing I have to say about Toussaint, while we're fighting this war to end enslavement, for our dignity, for the race of vengeance, Toussaint sends his kids to France to go to school. I mean, that's a contradiction. You know, it shouldn't have happened. So for all of those reasons, Toussaint was brave. We don't take that away from him. Misguided, not race first, not a race avenger, not reclaiming our African dignity. Oh, and the last thing I have to add, in his constitution, Toussaint's, he stipulated Catholicism shall be the state religion. I mean, what were we fighting for? I mean, the white Jesus, the white visions, then why have this revolution? So for all of those reasons, Toussaint is brave, but he's not our hero. Let's summarize. Toussaint is off the scene by 1803. Dessalines is clearly in charge. Okay, now one part I skipped was, you know, with all the upheaval in France, France at one point decided to abolish slavery. But then Napoleon gets to power 1799, and he decides, no, we're going back to where it was. So they want to reestablish slavery in their colonies. We're talking Bourbon, we're talking Martinique, we're talking Guadeloupe, and of course, Saint-Domingue. Okay, so starting in December of 1801, Napoleon sends his troops, his armada back into Saint-Domingue and all over the Caribbean. Get this, by February of 1802, get this, 60,000 French soldiers come in to invade, reoccupy, and re-enslave Africans in Saint-Domingue. That day, when they woke up, when Toussaint woke up, Toussaint trembled. He couldn't see the horizon. It was nothing but French ships, the whole armada with cannons, terrified. And he punked out, and he said, what to do? Dessalines said, what do you mean what to do? What we've always done. Burn the cities, burn the crops, go to the mountains, let's go fight. But because of the hesitancy, it didn't happen. Christophe, another general, Henri Christophe, in the north of Haiti, he was ready. He burned everything inside. He said, okay, come and get it. There's nothing for you to get. Anyway, Dessalines takes over. He's about to take over. In November of 1802, the guy that Napoleon had sent, Leclerc, Charles Leclerc, gets killed. A new guy takes over, Rochambeau. This is the real white nationalist. I mean, he wanted to kill every African, just decimate, violate everything. This was the right guy for that time. So now you get Rochambeau, the whitest of the whites, versus Dessalines, the blackest of the blacks. Rochambeau gets this. He says he's going to, no, before I tell you the story about the dogs, after a defeat by Dessalines, they went and took 500 African enslaved people, cut their throats and hung them in full view to terrorize. This is the evil. I mean, they don't just kill us, violate, subjugate, sodomize, but then they do that. Dessalines says, not a problem. A week later, they capture 500 French soldiers. They cut their throats, cut their limbs, and hang them for full view. Said, we're going to keep fighting that way. This is total war. Rochambeau has an idea. He said, I'm going to make sure that man-eating dogs will kill Dessalines. He orders special dogs from the Canary Islands off Africa to bring into Saint-Domingue, and those dogs are going to go after Dessalines and not just kill him, eat him up. Dessalines, and he broadcasts this. Dessalines surrounds Rochambeau's camp. This is going to last 8 weeks. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out. Eventually, Rochambeau had to kill the dogs to eat for his own meat. I mean, this is the type of psychological warfare Dessalines brought. He understood this is I don't know if he's the greatest general we've ever had, but he's in the same discussion with, I said, Shabaka, Pianki, Narmer, and Ramses. These are the top African military strategists we've ever had. November 29, 1803, in a town that it had a French name called Fort Dauphin. Fort Dauphin. This is the first time Dessalines is going to announce, you are independent. So January 1, 1804, which is a Sunday, believe it or not, where he gives in the Declaration of Independence, he says, for all Africans on the universe, as long as you step foot on that island, number one, you are free. But number two, the most important thing, you are citizen. You have a country that will defend and protect you and provide services. That was the philosophy of Dessalines.
I think this story, which will continue in part 2, is one that all of us needs to understand and to study. Well, as always, it's always a pleasure, Brother Raymond Dugue, and certainly until next time, I just want to say to everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast, and we continue to encourage you to tune in, to write, and to tell a friend. But until next time, Louise Dente saying thank you.